How you doing, guys? We're back. We're going to look at another whiskey. This time out we're going to be looking at Jim Beam Rye Pre-Prohibition style. And this is sitting at 45% alcohol by volume or 90 proof. It's aged at least 4 years, but they don't put an age statement on it. But for it to be a rye, it has to be aged at least that long. And they don't give you the mash bill, but this is apparently a reformation of their original yellow label rye, which I believe only set at 40% perhaps. So this is kind of a rebranding of that, sort of a restart of that, trying to compete with the influx of ryes that have been coming into the market as of late, especially the cheaper ones that have been very popular. This sits at $30 or so in the NSLC. I couldn't quite remember what I paid for it, and at the time I was looking for it on the NSLC website, I couldn't find it. So, in fact, I think this was all on clearance. I think these all came from that whiskey conference tasting thing that happened a few months back, and we got so much stock from that left over at the NSLC, and they tried to sell a bunch of it off. And this along with like Jim Beam Bonded and Jim Beam, I think Dark or Black or something along those lines, all these different repackaged, relabeled stuff is all there on clearance. But like I said, we don't have the mash bill for this, but it has to have at least 51% rye in it and done in new charred oak barrels. So there you go. But yes, this is basically the new version of the yellow label, if you're familiar with that one. And I'm not actually familiar with that one. I've never seen or heard of that one before, but I'm not a big fan of Jim Beam anyway, so it's not like I've been interested in looking. There we go. I imagine there's probably some coloring done here, but she's, as it stands, a golden amber color. Nice dark highlights there. Yeah, we'll go right to the aroma here. Alright, you definitely get the rye in there, a little bit of rye spice. Slightly butterscotch, toffee kind of thing. But you do get a nice little bit of fruity rye and rye spice, pepper kind of thing going on there. A little bit of wood in there as well. Smells a lot like, which one is it? I'm trying to remember now. The Crown Royal rye. I think that one tends to be a bit more on the fruity side, and this is sort of close to that. Although, of course, this isn't 100% rye like that one's supposed to be. It's a little simplistic, though. It's not particularly complex. So go right to the taste. Cheers. Bigger heat than what I was expecting on this, but very again, very simplistic. Just a little bit of nondescript fruitiness, caramel, moves right over to the rye. A lot of wood dominating this one. Seems the finish is very wood heavy, very barrel heavy. And it's not necessarily tannic either, it's just just very wood heavy. But you do get a nice little bit of rye spice there, so it is tasty. It's also quite warm on the first couple hits here. It's smoothing out now, but those first couple sips were pretty warm. This is very, very much in line with what a Canadian rye used to be like. A bit more punchier, perhaps. It doesn't quite have the smooth, easy drinkability of some of the more basic, older Canadian ryes that I've had, just sort of the cheap ones. This is essentially kind of a upgraded version of that. But it's very middle of the road, I'd say. It's not particularly complex or flavorful. It's just got a couple little flavors going on, and there's nothing too impressive. Like this is no in regard, like trying to compare this to the Canadian Club or the Crown Royal 100% ryes that we recently got in the market here in Canada in the last couple of years. This doesn't even stand up to those as far as I'm concerned. It's just, it doesn't have the depth of flavor that those two have, and those two aren't necessarily super complex either, but they're much more full-bodied, much more enjoyable rye whiskeys, I think. This seems like it's still geared towards that Jim Beam, middle of the road, you can make a cocktail with it kind of idea for a lot of their whiskeys. And that's fine if that's what you're going for. But it seems like they're giving you that option right up front. Like, hey, if you're not too keen on this straight, you can definitely mix it. And that's what you can definitely do with this. It might add a little bit extra flavor to a mixed drink. That's about it. But as it stands, it's not necessarily one that after I finish this bottle I'm going to come back to. So I'm going to, there's nothing particularly wrong with it either. It's just kind of boring. But it's well made for what it is. I don't really detect any flaws. I'm going to give this B-. That's where we'll sit with this one. So the Jim Beam Rye, pre-prohibition style, their reformulation of their classic Jim Beam Yellow Label Rye. We're going to give that a B-. It's decent in a pinch, I guess. But in a market that is just flooded with really, really good cheap rye whiskeys these days, this one doesn't really stand out. Alright guys, we'll see you later. Thank you for watching.